Good evening, everyone. Oh, this is great. Thank you for that warm welcome, and just really excited to be here with all of you tonight. As Kathy mentioned earlier, Liberty Mutual is very proud to be a sponsor of this event and to honor our fellow Bostonian leaders, business leaders who are carrying on this great city's legacy of leading the way for diversity and change. Liberty Mutual stands beside you in this journey. We rely on our agents of change to help promote the cultural dexterity that makes our businesses and our community the forward-thinking, resilient home to creative genius and leaders who pave the way for all others. So it is no wonder that the citizens of Massachusetts have long stood behind our keynote speaker, whom I have the privilege of introducing this evening, a man who proudly represented our needs in the United States Senate and who has defended our rights in the courtroom, easing our healthcare burdens and eliminating regulatory burdens that blocked economic growth for those who needed it the most, the small businesses driven to change the status quo. The Honorable Senator William Mo Cowan is Boston proud. He doesn't shy away from the uphill battles on the road to diversity and change. His advice is heeded by Ivy League to the neighborhood YMCA. In 2013 alone, Senator Cowan was recognized by the UMass Boston Center for Collaborative Leadership for building a better Boston. And he received the Paul Robeson National Leadership Award from the Concerned Black Men of Massachusetts. Just like the city of Boston, a single label cannot define Senator Cowan: public servant, corporate lawyer, philanthropist, intellectual, mentor, Bostonian. Now, will you please join me in welcoming Senator William Mo Cowan.
Wow. If only the guy that Dawn had introduced actually came on the stage tonight. That would be awesome. First of all, greetings and good evening. I am thrilled to be here tonight. What a glorious gathering. What a wonderful evening. We have the sunset behind us, and I am the only thing standing between you and the award winners. And if you'll indulge with me, I only have approximately 75 minutes of material. First of all, I was going to stand up here this evening and talk about following the mayor, a phenomenal public servant, a thrilling public speaker, and I was nervous enough about that. And then Nigel Tay and his friends got on stage and just set the party off. Let's give it up one more time for Nigel and friends. And I don't know about the other tables, but at my table, when the Jackson 5 retrospective started, it was a good time. Let me begin by telling you I'm thrilled to be here tonight. This is a great occasion, a great organization, a great event that speaks to and signifies the best of Boston, of the Commonwealth of our nation. It speaks to our aspirations, and it speaks to the reality of the organizations who will be recognized this evening. And I congratulate you all in advance. Whether you receive the award or are nominated, the very fact that you are nominated speaks volumes about what you stand for. I'm thrilled, and I thank the Ad Club and the Ad Club Foundation and the Committee for the Rosoff Awards to give me the opportunity to address you this evening. And I'm happy to be here with you to recognize the businesses walking the walk of diversity and inclusion. Now, if you'll indulge me, I'm going to go back to our mayor a little bit, because if you want to talk about walking the walk, you got to talk about our new mayor. Now, tonight actually is the second time in recent weeks, Chief, that I've had the privilege and burden, as it were, of following the new mayor. He's a dynamic speaker, has a great and rich personal story that you all know. and that he is fond of telling, and with good reason, because it speaks to the promise and possibility that is evident in this great city. Each occasion he's spoken before me has given me the opportunity to gauge even more what a dynamic public leader he is, and appreciate even more why the good people of Boston selected him to succeed another great diversity champion, Mayor Thomas Menino. Now, when Mayor Menino announced his decision not to seek re-election in 2013, everyone wondered, what would this first open mayoral election in 20 years in a newly majority-minority city bring? Would it evidence the evolving diversity and changing demographic of greater Boston? As you know, they would not be disappointed. Almost one half of the baker's dozen candidates who decided to run in the campaign were people of color. Now, some were disappointed, not surprisingly, because only one of those 13 was a woman. And interestingly enough, some cried all manner of horror when the final combatants for this august office were two men of Irish-American descent. I was not among those adopting this ill-informed view. I was not among the chorus, because I knew both candidates, and I was confident that their campaign statements about the evolution of this great city and the desire to make it even more inclusive were more than mere campaign promises. The statements issued on the campaign trail were reflective of the candidate's character, an understanding of the value of diversity in organizations, especially our government. If I'm being honest, however, Chief, I must admit that I winced just a bit when I heard that candidate Walsh promised that no less than one half of Mayor Walsh's cabinet would be people of color. Now, before some of you fall out of your chair, wondering why I might wince at such a proclamation, let me explain. I reacted as I did because I have some sense, Chief, of the difficulty in fulfilling just a meaningful and powerful promise. You see, I once served as a chief of staff myself for our governor, and I once had the duty of identifying talent to fill important cabinet posts. And I can confirm, beyond a shadow of any doubt, that we are long past the days when anyone can issue the dubious claim that there is not enough diverse talent to fill important leadership roles in business and government. Those days are behind us. In our task, we easily identified dozens of candidates not only qualified to serve in the governor's cabinet and other leadership positions, but our process also led us to become familiar with the next generation of talent already in the pipeline. But we also discovered, Chief, that it's often difficult to reroute that pipeline to our preferred destination, especially if your destination is a public sector position characterized by relatively low pay, heightened media scrutiny, and virtually no margin of error. But other than that, the opportunities are great. Seriously, my wince was born of my knowledge that what the mayor pledged to do was the right thing to do, but it was going to be hard to do. But this is where our mayor deserves credit. As my great-granddaddy Brady would say, if it ain't hard work, it usually ain't work worth doing. So I'm rooting for the mayor to meet his promise. But we should root for the mayor even if he finds it difficult, as we did, to meet his target, because the target is not this mayor's goal. This mayor's goal is to make this city, his city, our city, a city where one and all feel like they belong and that the richness of its bounty is available to all. Because in some sense, ladies and gentlemen, isn't that why we're all here tonight? To talk about diversity and inclusion. The Ad Club and the Rosoff Awards have an 18-year-long tradition of honoring businesses and individuals with meaningful commitments to diversity. So tonight, of course, I'm going to focus on inclusion. I want to focus on inclusion because diversity alone is not a meaningful metric without inclusion. And also because inclusion, frankly, is a concept I feel capable of defining. The dictionary tells us that to include means to comprise or contain as part of a whole, and that's fairly straightforward. Diversity, on the other hand, is a slightly harder word to pin down. The dictionary merely says that it is an instance of being composed of differing elements or qualities. And I am chary of attempting to map out all the elements and or the qualities that create diversity. Frankly, because I fear excluding anything or anyone in my remarks tonight. And if the Rosoff Awards are about anything, they are about excluding exclusion. Stated less colloquially, of course, I'm talking about inclusion. Tonight is about inclusion. There can be no doubt that diversity and inclusion are intimately related, but in many ways, inclusion itself is a more meaningful objective than diversity. Because diversity often is thought of or presented as a readily identifiable metric, a percentage, a head count, how many of this group versus another group. Inclusion, on the other hand, speaks to our higher ideals. Respecting and valuing differences, embracing change, welcoming viewpoints that not only differ from ours, but also challenge the foundations of our viewpoints, and that they offer equal opportunity. Or as I recently read, simply put, diversity is about getting a uniform, inclusion is about getting in the game. Now, given the reason we've gathered here tonight, it is unlikely that I will be telling anyone in this room anything that you do not know already about either diversity or inclusion. For example, we all gathered here tonight know that diversity and inclusion are important for reasons of social justice. As the great poet laureate Maya Angelou might say, it is time for all of us to know and teach that in diversity and inclusion there is beauty and there is strength. And often with some surprise we discover that our differences are not always so different as we think, and we find comfort where our life experiences and perspectives overlap. Of course, we are at risk of missing these moments of quiet comfort and shared perspective when we allow ourselves and our institutions to default to seeking comfort in the same or that which is similar, rather than embracing that which often superficially seems distant and different. But as the author Stephen Covey wrote, strength lies in differences, not similarities. This is part of the reason so many companies and organizations, including those both nominated and acknowledged this evening, have made diversity and inclusion key components of their overall organizational strategy. Inclusivity makes good business sense. Organizations do not retain diversity without inclusivity, and research has demonstrated that diversity improves the bottom line. Believe me, it just does. Now, I recognize that I served in Congress, so you may not be inclined to believe just me. But the facts and figures support my statement. A study reported in the Harvard Business Review last December found that companies that have leaders who themselves are diverse or have a wide range of diverse experiences, even within the same company, tend to out-innovate and outperform all others. Employees at these companies were 45% likelier to report that their firm's market share grew over the previous year, and 70% likelier to report that the firm captured a new market. It's a fine day indeed when something that we know is morally right also is right for our bottom lines. Now, looking at our great city, our city on the hill, the city of Boston, it is clear, it is unassailable that we have become more diverse by the metric of race and ethnicity. Indeed, as I have said, and the mayor himself noted, we are now a minority-majority city. Blacks, Hispanics, Asians, and other minority groups account for more than half of this city's population, up from less than a third in the 1980s. At the same time, nearly 40% of the United States is non-white or Hispanic. Yet the question remains, has Boston succeeded in becoming an inclusive city. Certainly, our city has come a long way since the busing disputes of the 1970s. We elected the second African-American governor in our nation's history, became only the third state to send more than one African-American to the U.S. Senate. Turn to an early page in your program and you will see the first, the great Edward Brooke. We watched a Haitian-American woman command the St. Patrick's Day breakfast as if she was born to the manor. And as I noted earlier, we elected a mayor who is committed to making sure that half of the Boston Police Department and his cabinet are people of color. As an aside, I should note that there remains considerable debate about whether the hyphenated descriptors I have uttered tonight, Irish American, African American, Haitian American, are the best way to promote diversity and inclusion. Many believe that the hyphenate in those terms serves only to further divide and distract us from the central tenet that we are one, without regard to where we are from. Or, as President Theodore Roosevelt himself once said, in this country, we have no place for hyphenated Americans. Well, you will forgive me if I disagree with our rough-riding president. That hyphen, in my opinion, in no way serves to divide us. It is a hyphen, after all, not a slash. And as a hyphen, it both looks like and serves as a bridge between our cultural past and present. That hyphen recognizes and respects that we are one whole, but a whole made up of many distinct and diverse parts. And it is in this distinction where we find the strength of our country and the great American culture. Yet still, at the venues where the power elite in this city and state gather to make decisions, in our boardrooms, the composition of those sitting at the table does not mirror the composition of those around our neighborhoods. Commonwealth Magazine earlier this year reported that minorities represent less than 6% of the board positions at the 100 largest publicly traded companies in Massachusetts. Looking strictly at racial composition, what that means is, of the 845 directors at those 100 companies, there are 16 blacks, 4 Hispanics, and 26 Asians. Sadly, I am reporting to you tonight, these figures are even worse than the news from around the nation, which ain't that great. According to Bloomberg News, just 17% of Fortune 500 board seats are held by women, while only 15 women are chief executives in those companies. And last September, Black Enterprise Magazine issued a report showing that 30% of the top 250 companies on the S&P 500 had not one single person of color on their boards. As much as these numbers suggest that relative paucity of diversity and inclusion within existing power structures is, in fact, a social justice problem, many institutions and the men, yes, most are still run by men, need to come to grips with the fact that they have a business problem. Without diverse leadership, women are 20% less likely than straight white men to win endorsement for their ideas. People of color are 24% less likely, and members of the LGBT community are 21% less likely, according to our friends at the Harvard Business Review. A team with a member who shares a client's ethnicity is 152% higher or likelier than another team to understand that client and their needs. Whether for the sake of morality or the sake of the bottom line, as the stewards of our businesses, I urge everyone in this room, not just tonight, but for every day, to make inclusivity your priority. Many companies in the Commonwealth have diversity initiatives. As the leaders in those organizations, I beseech you, make it your initiative. A study of companies from around the globe that have earned reputations for inclusivity revealed an interesting finding. Each successful company's leader approached inclusiveness as a personal mission. I'll say it again. Each successful company's leader approached inclusiveness as a personal mission. They did not hand off the responsibility for it to another person or simply announce the formation of a blue ribbon committee. By the way, if your company has a diversity blue ribbon committee and no C-level executive sits on or chairs that committee, you are telling everyone inside and outside your company that diversity and inclusion are not core components of your business strategy. Do not kid yourself. Trust me, your employees, your recruits, and your customers know that when issues matter to your company, as a business leader, you make it your business to lead that effort. And when you do not lead your diversity initiative, you are letting them know that diversity does not nearly matter as much as you claim. Norm change, unlike wealth, is something that has been empirically shown to follow the trickle-down model. If, as a leader, you demonstrate that inclusion is a priority, it is much more likely that those who work with and for you will treat it as such. Now, I do not mean to intimate that changing an organization's culture is as easy as sending around a personal endorsement for inclusivity or holding a workshop, or several, as the case may be. Cultivating an environment of inclusivity is a practice. Treating it like a one and done would be the equivalent of going to the gym once and then expecting to be fit. Trust me, I've done this a few times. Like our never-ending quest to stay in tip-top shape, promoting diversity and inclusion is not a challenge that will just address itself. And a broad commitment is not nearly enough. As the companies nominated and to be recognized here tonight know, it takes serious planning and sustained effort. But here's the great good news, as they say to my mother's church. Diversity tends to perpetuate itself. Including and empowering diverse staff and leadership signals to all that your environment is one where differences are celebrated and incorporated. We have a word for that. It's called inclusion. In turn, your embrace of diversity and inclusion will attract additional diverse talent who wish to be part of what you are building. They too will want to be included. Another way to effectuate the top-down norm change that I described is to promote diverse leadership. When it comes time for you business leaders in the room to appoint new board members to your companies or your organizations, data shows that only 20% of board positions are secured through professional searches. The other 80% come through personal contacts and relationships of existing board members or company leaders. If our boardrooms and company leadership already are absent diverse voices, then we know that we must redouble our efforts and work even harder to look beyond those personal relationships to find the talent to include and improve our businesses. A board comprised of directors representing a range of perspectives unavoidably leads to an environment of collaborative tension that is the essence of good government. There are fewer unspoken assumptions, less groupthink, and a greater likelihood of innovation. These boards collectively draw upon a broad assortment of competencies, priorities, and insights, providing CEOs and senior management with invaluable resources. And not only is it meaningful by itself to have a diverse board, but we must acknowledge that board positions also serve as C-suite recruitment tools. If you not only want the governance of your organization to reflect diversity and inclusion, and you want the operational leadership to reflect it, then you must ensure that you're looking beyond those personal relationships and recognize that your board leads to company leadership. We need to commit to consistently working towards inclusivity on all levels, both here in Boston and around our great country. I'm proud to be here tonight to speak to you, a night when we are going to celebrate companies and individuals who've taken on the challenge of changing the norms, of promoting inclusivity. And I will tell you that I look forward to the day when the composition of our boardrooms, our government, our executive suites, all resemble the richness of the communities which they serve and which all of us live. And I will tell you this, as I look upon this crowd and I think about this evening and the 18 years of great service of the Ag Club and the Rosoff Awards, I feel ever confident that this day that we all believe in soon will arrive. Thank you for having me tonight.